This is a book review of the Ransom trilogy, and specifically that Hideous Strength. I found myself explaining how cool this book is to so many people that I figured I would make a reference to make it easier to give someone an overview and why I recommend it. If you want some deeper treatments, I highly recommend a former Hollywood screenwriter, Andrew Klavan. He spent about 20 minutes and covered the topic well enough to get into the depths if you don't want to take the time to read it. Another treatment that you may be interested in, if you want to go a little deeper, is the theologian and pastor Douglas Wilson, who is a big fan of Lewis, and he has covered the entire Ransom trilogy in several lectures that you could find out there in YouTube land. And I credit Wilson with suggesting the name Ransom Trilogy instead of what is commonly referred to as Lewis's Space Trilogy. Douglas, I take your recommendation on the good grounds that the main character, who's a messianic type character in the series, he doesn't get a chance to save until this last installment. And don't get caught up on the messianic idea. It's just a story, and a good one. So the novels break down like this. Out of the Silent Planet, the first one was on a planet called Malacandra. The second book was called Paralandra. And that Hideous Strength, the third one, was a planet called Thulcandra. Now, all these have correlations with Malacandra is Mars, Paralandra is Venus, Thulcandra is Earth. And this last one takes place on Earth. And all throughout the series, there are what we used to call aliens, but that's not very kind, especially if they are superior creatures to ourselves. Lewis actually classifies this hierarchy of creatures on different planets as a way of demonstrating that even in the fiction world, beings who have not had a certain level of self-interested pride, that they can actually benefit one another's existence and appreciate one another's contributions, their talents and abilities, and better society together. So the primary character is named Ransom, and as you will find out, this is a well-executed name for his character. As a matter of fact, a former colleague of mine with whom I would have deep and theological conversations continually recommended this series to me, simply because I would often name drop the meaning of words into our coffee talk. So a lot of the names have some parallels to good meanings. Thank you, Jacinta. I like Lewis, but I haven't always found him easy to read. From Mere Christianity to Great Divorce, I've had a better experience listening to audio. Most of my literary intake these days have been on audio anyway. This is how I went through that Hideous Strength. And here's the story. I was listening on headphones going through a store one day shopping, and I was playing what became the weirdly climatic banquet at the end of the book. And I was walking through the store and I was like, what? Right there in the store. So that banquet, it was worth the whole trilogy. As Klavan points out in his review, that this story is amazingly prophetic in more ways than this one, but too many spoilers to name all the evidence of the prophecy. But I'll give you one example. There's this organization whose purpose is to use science to mend all of man's ailments, and it's called the National Institute for Coordinated Experiments, NICE for short. And this is supposed to carry the weight of irony in the same way through today's Antifa, whose name is the opposite of their fascist ethos and actions. And sometimes director and the word head are sometimes used interchangeably, but you can't do this for that Hideous Strength because one of the main characters in the book is literally just a head. And that's a long story. But the director of NICE gets up at this banquet and he does a bumbling Joe Biden speech better than Brandon himself. And it'll have you rolling back old footage of old speeches to see if Jules had been tapping into the White House teleprompter. And notably, this book was published in 1945, 3 years before another dystopian novel with similar social critiques was published without the spiritual roots that Lewis put into this one called 1984. Ever heard of it? And if you've seen these T-shirts, "Make 1984 fiction again," this novel may be for you. So that Hideous Strength and the Ransom trilogy, I highly recommend it. Lewis was definitely canning our day and age way before our day and age got here. So it's what happens when humanism, scientific reasoning, takes over from morality that comes from a creative God. So I recommend it and I hope you enjoy it.